Hi guys, welcome back to another video from Hustle is for Life Motivation, the channel that is the espresso shot to unlocking your full potential and achieving your greatness as a leader. Today's interview is actually going to be an audio only interview. So that's why what you're seeing right now on the screen is actually my desktop background. And today's guest is actually a renowned business leader, author, speaker, and a mentor whose career spans over 50 years in business across several industries. Now, he has very elegantly roasted the lessons he learned from working in his father's grocery store at a very young age with his unique servant leadership philosophy to grow Starbucks from only 28 stores in North America to 15,000 stores in 5 continents. Now, despite his humble background, he worked hard on himself to become the president of Starbucks International and then worked the hustle to grow Starbucks into an international phenomenon and secured the position of the president of Starbucks International for himself. At the moment, he is retired. He's over 70 years old, but he is still just continuing to make impact in different ways by serving on the boards of several for-profit and non-profit organizations and foundations. He is the author of It's Not About Coffee, Leadership Principles from a Life at Starbucks, a book that is considered to be one of the hallmark books on leadership. And he is so committed to the development and the education of future leaders that he travels the world speaking to leaders, corporation students, and other audiences. Now, he is actually somebody who's very down to earth. He loves spending time with his family and grandchildren, and his favorite hobby is boating. So with this, please help me welcome the former leader of Starbucks International, the farmer of unforgettable life lessons, and the barista of world-class leadership tactics, Mr. Howard Behar. Howard, thank you so much for making the time to be here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Talal. Thanks for inviting me.
No problem. We're going to do this interview, and we're kind of going to jump a little bit all over the place with the questions. But just firstly, I want to start off with something that really hit base with me. It was very, very powerful, and I heard you talk about it in a different interview, but it was really powerful and really hit base with me. Can you maybe take us back to when you were working in your father's grocery store and the actual lesson that you learned from him and how it actually shaped you as a leader?
Well, it was life lessons, and they were all along, but there was one particular incident that I remember with my dad, and I was about 8 years old, and my dad, had this little neighborhood grocery store, and in those days, he had charge accounts for all his customers, and they paid their bills once a month if they had the money. And one day I'm in the grocery store with him, and it was after school, and I was at the front counter, and he was ringing up a customer with all the groceries they were buying, and he asked me to go get a couple of baskets of strawberries out of the back of the store. And so I went and got the basket of strawberries, and I came back with the strawberries, and my dad wrapped them up and put them in the bag so the customer could take them home. And I was old enough to know that when the customer left, that my dad hadn't rung the strawberries up on the cash register. Right. And I looked at him and I said, "Dad, you forgot to ring those up." And he said, "Howard, not everything in life do we get paid for. And these people are not only our customers, but they're our friends." And he said, "I happen to know that they love strawberries, but right now they can't afford to buy fresh fruit. And so it's just my way of doing something for them without getting paid." And so it was one of those life lessons that I never forgot. And I've carried it with me my whole life, that not everything you do in life do you need to get paid for.
That is so powerful. I actually heard this, and it just hit me. It really hit base with me, because at the moment in the current environment, there's a lot of focus on driving with revenue and, making sure that you're earning money. And there's not a lot of focus, unfortunately, on developing people and, trying to figure out what makes people tick, how they work, what motivates them, what their struggles are. There's hardly any focus on that. So that was so powerful when I heard this, and I think it's one of the most important lessons that the leaders today need to know.
Is that you got to give back before you got to give before you get. And my dad was so good at that. It was just who he was as a person. And it was kind of the nature of his business. In those days, these were neighborhood grocery stores. They weren't his customers. They were his friends and his neighbors. And so anytime he could do anything for them, and they returned the favor by shopping with him and caring about him and helping him if he needed help. And so, in today's world, it seems to be, what can you give me versus what can I give you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons that, there's such a big issue at the moment with, big corporations having a huge turnover of staff is that they don't take a lot of time to, invest in their staff and their customers.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Mostly they don't invest in their people. And I'm not just talking about education and development of their people. I'm talking about investing their personal time in the development of their people. Yeah. And, one-on-one coaching, not annual performance reviews, but coaching in the moment, And that's what grows an organization, is the leaders that care about their people and are willing to give them time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that's really powerful. So actually, thank you so much for sharing that. I just wanted to start off with that because when I heard it, it really hit base with me, and it was something really, really powerful. So I just wanted to start off with that. My next question is that now you've actually retired from your position at Starbucks, and you were there for a very long time, almost over 2 decades. What do you miss the most?
The people.
The people.
I miss the relationships. Yeah, I miss spending time with the people that I worked with and that were on my team and people that weren't on my team. I miss that part of it. There's just an energy that you can't replace on the outside looking in, because you're working together every day. You're dealing with problems. You're dealing with challenges. You're celebrating successes. You're growing together as people, and you're helping each other out. And there's no substitute for that.
Yeah. That's amazing. Really, really powerful.
You don't ask me what I don't miss.
But you can answer that if you so wish.
Yeah, I don't miss getting up every morning wanting to know how we did yesterday. Yeah. And I don't miss that part of it. I don't miss the bureaucracy of it all. But fortunately, there wasn't too much of it. But I don't miss that. But I do miss the people.
Yes. And I believe actually you still try and go to any Starbucks store that you can, and you try and spend time there.
Every day. Yeah, just almost every day I'm in a Starbucks store, usually as a customer,
That's amazing.
Getting a cup of coffee, et cetera, whatever.
That is so amazing. I love that. I really love that. That's awesome. Now that actually, you look back on, all the time that you spent at Starbucks and how it grew from just like 28 stores to now like over 15,000 stores internationally. What do you think is the link between your mindset as a leader and the actual resulting success of the organization?
That I intrinsically understood that it wasn't about coffee, that it was about people. Yeah. And I coined a term when I first came there that we weren't in the coffee business serving people, we were in the people business serving coffee.
Yes.
And I think that's what I got quickly, and that's what I drove in the company. I started there where there were only 300 people. Now there's, probably 300,000-400,000.
Yes.
And I had the ability to affect that change in the organization.
Wow.
And the opportunity to do it.
Yes, that's amazing. That's so powerful. I love that. I really love that. The actual quote is just by itself so powerful, and I think the leaders of today can just benefit from just having that quote, as their mantra, essentially. So I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that you really focused on the people as in the staff, that worked for Starbucks, but also the customers, the experience that the customers got when they visited a Starbucks store. So as a leader, how can you design an environment where people are taking responsibility and they're holding themselves accountable? Because I think that's another thing that is lacking in today's organizations, that there's a lot of kind of downward push from the actual managers and the leaders on the staff to meet the quotas, to generate the revenue, to get so many bums on seats, etc. But how do you actually design an environment where people just take responsibility and they're able to hold themselves accountable, and there's not that micromanagement from the top?
Well, first of all, your people have to understand and align themselves with the greater purpose of the organization. They have to own it themselves.
Yeah.
You can't own it for them. And so they have to understand what is the greater purpose of your organization. If all it is to sell more, make more money, that's not very motivating. It doesn't really get you up in the morning.
Yeah.
But if it's to do something that's serving your community, to serving people, people can get themselves aligned with that.
Yeah.
Then it's at the end of the day, it's how you treat each other. It's how I always thought leadership's job was to. Here I have a little equation that I believe in.
Right.
You grow the people. In other words, you make them better, help to make them better people, and help them to grow in terms of skills. The people grow the organization, and the organization grows the business. But you got to start with growing the people first.
Yes.
And the other thing is that, look, there's a law of expectations. You get what you expect in this world. Yeah. And if you expect your people to do a good job, they will do a good job. If you expect them to do a bad job, then you're putting in all the controls in to try to keep them from making a mistake. And that doesn't work. That doesn't motivate anybody.
Yeah.
So, if people don't want to know what to do, they want to know why.
Yes. Yeah.
If you only have a rule book, here's what you do and don't do anything else, then they don't attach to it emotionally. But if they know why we're doing what we're doing and what it accomplishes, then they attach to it. Now then they can create on their own and they can do a good job. If they understand that our job, primarily is to help people to have a better day every day when they come into a Starbucks store, to help make their lives a little bit better. And that means that they're not our customers, right? They're human beings. And they're human beings that wake up in the morning and they might drive to work and get a traffic ticket and they're upset, or they maybe their child just got a full ride to a big university, and they're excited to tell somebody. And so we have to be a human being with them. We have to be able to have conversations when they want to have them, and we also have to know when they don't want to have conversations. And that just comes from having your antenna up as a human being and listening with your heart as well as your ears.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. I love that. And you talk a lot about this, by the way, in your book as well. That you have to grow the people, and the people will then grow the organization. So that is so powerful, and it's so true. It's so simple and it's so true.
If you depend on manuals to to drive your organization, then you're going to have an organization that acts like manuals. I don't know if you paid any attention to what happened on United Airlines where they dragged somebody off the airplane.
Yes, yeah.
And hurt him. So those people paid attention to the manual because that's what they were told to do. And they were told if they didn't do that, they'd be in trouble. Yeah. Instead of using common sense to think about the situation they have and remember that their goal is to treat people with respect and dignity. That couldn't have been any further from respect and dignity than if you made it up. You couldn't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
And here it is, they actually physically hurt the person, kicking them off an airplane because they'd oversold the airplane. You know, what kind of people do that?
Yeah. No, it was really, really sad.
And they were listening to the manual.
Yeah.
They were reading the rule book. And, you know, I always believe in tool books, not rule books. A tool book means that if you need to have a tool, you know, like if in the kitchen you've got a screw that's loose in your little light switch, you don't have to go into the garage to get a screwdriver. You can get a little knife out of your knife drawer and tighten it down.
Yeah.
And that means using common sense to take care of things when they need to be taken care of.
Yeah, I love that. And the passion in your voice is just so kind of obvious, and you know, its presence can be felt, that, you know, you're really, really passionate about this, and clearly, you know, this is coming from somebody who has been there, done that. So people who are actually watching this video, you know, please take this advice, you know, on board. And if you are a leader of a team, or if you are just, you know, somebody with a family, then you're a leader of your family, then this is all absolute pure gold coming your way. So, you know, please listen to it carefully and take all of this stuff on board. And Howard, thank you so much for sharing that. That was awesome. The other thing is that you actually very openly talk about, you know, like your own insecurities and the kind of difficulties that you faced while you were at Starbucks. And this is something, again, really, really powerful, because, you know, usually leaders, managers, directors, they don't talk about of their own personal insecurities, you know, in such an open way. But you are, you know, you talk about it very, very openly, which is just, you know, stunning. And I just want to ask you, like, what are some of the biggest internal adjustments that you made in order to deal with those insecurities?
Well, you know, the biggest insecurity I had when I was growing up in leadership, you know, from my 20s into my mid-30s, was I didn't have a college degree.
Right.
And that always bothered me. And I came out of high school and had a couple of years of community college, but that was it. And I was working in companies that had a lot of people from Harvard, MBAs, from Stanford, you know, master's degrees, had, you know, and I didn't have that. And in those early years, I was always sure that I just didn't measure up. And, you know, it did one thing. It forced me to do things that other people wouldn't do. I always felt that I had to do things that other people wouldn't do because, you know, that was the only way I was going to get ahead. And I like to say that I got really good at picking up cigarette butts. And the truth is I did get really good at that, you know, but, you know, after a while I started to gain confidence, and, you know, I started to hire a lot of those people myself, and I started to realize that, you know, that I had skills that they didn't have, and that I didn't have to be better than them. I could, you know, that wasn't the point. The point was, if I was leading a team, I just had to make sure that I had the right people on my team, and the people that were smarter than I was, I had to have them making the decisions that I shouldn't be making.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I gained confidence as time went on, and as I got, you know, dealt with the problems and more success, and, you know, I started to affirm that I was okay, that I was good enough. And I had this little affirmation that I used to say to myself all the time: I have enough, I am enough, I do enough. I am enough, I have enough, I do enough.
Wow.
And I repeated that thousands of times, and over time, and slowly I began to believe it. and it's like you're trying to create habits in your own brain. And so, all of us have insecurities. I went through bouts where I had tremendous anxiety. I lived with anxiety my whole life. I'm much better now, but
Yeah.
because it's been treated. But when I was working at Starbucks, I don't think I slept a night through.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd wake up in the middle of the night worried about something, and making sure I was getting the job done right or whatever it was, or I hadn't missed something, and it took its toll.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had treatment earlier, but I didn't know that you could, and so, but finally, it's over time, I still have the anxiety, but it's been treated well. But I worked with that my whole life. Now, part of it was good. It kept me on that edge,
Yeah.
all the time. But part of it was destructive. And, I'd encourage any of your listeners that deal with a lot of anxiety to go get help, because you don't have to lose yourself. I was so afraid that if I took a pill for it, that somehow I'd lose my edge, but I never have. I still have my passion and my energy that I always had.
Yeah.
And, and now I'm more calm about it. But, that was part of life, and it was part of what I dealt with,
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's just super, just amazing. The fact that you're able to talk about it so openly, and also the fact that, I know you're saying that you suffered from anxiety and you didn't really, slept through, when you were working at Starbucks at night, etc. But the fact is, I think it's because you really cared. You really cared. And
I cared a lot, yeah, but I think part of it was unhealthy. I could have cared and not driven myself crazy,
Yeah.
And so, I think that I share that because I think a lot of people do suffer from anxiety, and the only way that you're ever going to fix it is if you get help. And I did. I had counseling and medication to help it, and it really solved a lot of problems. And you don't have to wait. Don't be embarrassed by it. Deal with it. Deal with your issues.
Yeah.
We all have them. There are no perfect human beings. There's nobody that doesn't suffer from problems, whether it's insecurity, like I had in my early days, or anxiety, or whatever it is that you're dealing with. Deal with it. It's part of being human. And I always believed in sharing it with my people because I knew they were struggling too with whatever their problems were, and I wanted them to know that that's life, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about it.
Wow. Yeah, you're so right. Like, you don't know what their challenges are, and by actually being open about your insecurities and your challenges, you're actually, in a sense, empowering them to deal with their challenges and their insecurities.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really powerful. And the fact that when you were talking about, having the affirmation, I love the affirmation, by the way, but literally when you were talking about it, I was sitting here, I was getting goosebumps. No joke. I was getting goosebumps as you were talking about it. That's really amazing. That's an amazing affirmation. Thank you for sharing that with us, by the way. That's awesome. And people who are watching this, guys, this is the former president of Starbucks International, being so open with us. Like, it just gives me chills. And
well, why would you not? Is the question.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to share. I always considered business is no different than family. Wouldn't you share in a family? Of course you would.
So true.
Hopefully you would. And so, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
People are people, and life is one big continuous loop, and it all goes together. Who you are at home is who you should be, who you are at work, and vice versa.
Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have just actually touched upon the fact that when you were there, you were recruiting a lot of staff, and we also talked about a little bit earlier about the challenges that the current kind of organizations and managers are facing with the retention of staff and the recruitment of staff. So if we just kind of go there for a bit, can you just maybe give advice to other leaders regarding the recruitment and the retention of staff? What is it that they need to be looking at, and what is it that they need to be following in order to make sure that they're able to maintain both the recruitment and the retention at like a healthy rate?
Well, you're not hiring people when you bring them into an organization. You're extending an invitation for them to join you and the rest of the people. Just like you would extend an invitation to have somebody come over to your house for dinner.
Yep.
You wouldn't extend that invitation to people that are not nice. And I don't think anyway, maybe you would, I don't know, I wouldn't. But so when you do that, then it behooves you to really understand who those people are before you invite them into your home or invite them into your company.
Yeah.
And, it's much more important to know who they are as a human being, what their values are, what matters to them, what drives them, than to know what their skills are.
Yes.
You can always get to the skills. And so I always focused, when I was inviting somebody to join Starbucks, I always focused on who they were as a person. I would, the questions that I want answered were things like, if you have a brother or sister, what would they say about you? What do they like about you? What did they wish that you'd change? What do your parents think about you? What do you think about your parents? Who's your best friend, and why are they your best friend? What do they contribute to your life, and what do you contribute to their life?
Wow.
Who talked about somebody that you have helped in your life and how you helped them and what the result was of that? Talk about somebody that you developed in your life that you helped make a better person. Talk about somebody that helped you become a better person. I want to know about those things. I want to know about who they are as a person. We have plenty of time to get down to what their skill sets are.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what you want is somebody that fits your organization, that shares your values. They don't have to be the same, but shares your value. So that has a purpose to their life that's bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of people that you're going to need in your organization. And anybody that doesn't fit that, you shouldn't invite them to join your organization. And even if you do a good job of sorting it out, you're going to make mistakes. At the end of the day, it was hard to get fired at Starbucks. Even if you didn't make the numbers. It was easy to get fired if you didn't treat people with respect and dignity. So that's what we looked for, people that cared about other people. When you do that, you automatically slow turnover, because like attracts like. People want to be with people that share their values, and that's where they want to stay. And if you're treating them with respect and dignity, then they want to stay in that kind of organization.
Yeah. No, that's some really solid and sound advice for other people to take on board and follow. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Okay, so we'll go in a different direction now. What do you think that parents and teachers, what can they do to help our children become effective leaders of the future?
Well, I believe that, the number one issue it seems to me in schools today, particularly in the United States where I live, is social emotional intelligence. Is learning how to be a whole human being and beginning to understand who you are as a human being. We're trying to teach our kids about math and science and everything else, but we ought to be helping them to grow as a human being. I don't think you should be able to get out of high school without a clear view, have your values, your top 10 or top 8 values written down, how those values inform the decisions and actions you take in life. I don't think a child ought to get out of high school without at least having an outline or a mission statement, not for the rest of their life, but for at least for the next 5 years of their lives. And they should understand who they are and where they're going. And they should have a little plan for their lives. And, the biggest issue today, I think, is people don't know who they are, and so they don't think about when they take an action. We all have a board of directors that sit on our shoulders, and they're talking to us all the time. Most of us don't acknowledge that we have that board of directors, but a high school student, one of their friends calls them up and says, "Hey, let's go out and drink some beers tonight," and it's a school night. First of all, maybe it's illegal, like it is in the United States, if you're not 21 to drink. But still, high school kids do it, and they go out and they get themselves in trouble, they get arrested, or they have an automobile accident and kill somebody. All because they weren't conscious of their values. They weren't conscious of what really matters. What they were doing was responding to their impulses.
Yes.
And people do that. People do that in business, they do that in families, and so the key of life is learning to manage yourself, to learn to manage that board of directors that's talking to you all the time, because that board member that was actually talking to that kid said, hey Joe, go ahead and go out with your friend, that would be fun. So what if you have a few beers? There's no problem, and it's okay to drink and drive, and don't think about it. But if you should have had another board member that's saying, hey, is that who you are? Is that what your values are? Is that how you want to live your life? No, and so you need to have that split second where you are actually listening to these two board members argue with each other, and then you managing the situation yourself,
Yes.
And being aware of that. And so, it's not knowing who you are and not knowing what matters to you and not identifying your core values, I think is a real issue. And I think we need to work on that. We need to work on that as adults, but why not start earlier?
Yes.
Nothing's written in stone. You could write down your 8 or 10 core values at 16 years old, and maybe by the time you're 30, you might have different ones.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, really powerful. I love that. That you need to know yourself. And the thing is, the whole kind of the thing with education and learners and what's actually going on at the moment in the education system and what's actually required by society are very different, and it's something that's really close to my heart because I deal with those students on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that I usually try and instill in them is the fact that these years, which the teenage years that you have, which most people think are years of freedom and you don't have any responsibilities, so you can do whatever you want, that kind of thing. That's actually completely wrong. But these are the years where you form the blueprint for the rest of your life. So you really need to start taking responsibility. You really need to start getting to know yourself better, and you really need to start to think about who you want to become eventually, what kind of impact you want to make in the world. And
what do you want to leave behind when you leave this earth? Now, for a 15-year-old, that's pretty hard. I don't expect him to answer that. But I would expect him to think about who they are. So, if you gave them a list of 300 words that represent human values, which 8 would they choose to be their guide? And that's hard work. It's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
But, what is it that let's just say, what are they trying to accomplish over the next 5 years? What do they want to do with their lives? Well, I'd like to go to college. What would you like to learn? Why would you like to learn that?
Yeah.
And getting some guidance, and not having a parent or a teacher give them answers, but rather helping them to answer the questions, right? But with what the answers they want.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's very, very true. I love that. Awesome. Right, that's great. Okay, let's take it somewhere different. In your opinion, what is the number one most important quality or skill that every leader needs in today's environment?
Empathy.
Mm.
You know, you have to have empathy for your people. You have to understand where they are.
Yeah.
You have to care about your people.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that was number one. Yeah, you know, I mean, there's so many things. You know, you have to be a good listener. You have to care deeply about helping your people grow.
Yeah.
You know, that as a leader, you have to understand that's your primary responsibility.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, it's not to criticize them. It's not to instruct them. You know, it's to grow them. Is to help them be better people first, and then be better contributors to your team. You know, as well.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
but you know, look, leadership is not complicated. We make it complicated. You know, we think that we have to create fear in our people in order for them to perform, but it's exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah.
People that feel good about themselves do better. That doesn't mean it should be fake.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give compliments when people aren't doing a good job. You know, you give them the honest truth.
Yeah.
But when you're going to coach them, it's always with love in your heart.
Yeah.
You can give constructive criticism as long as it's with love in their heart, and they understand that you're there to help them, and that it's not, you're just not shoving them out and say, "Don't screw up," you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very, very true. Awesome. That's really great advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your book. You know, it's called "It's Not About the Coffee: Leadership Principles from a Life at Starbucks," and you basically, you know, go into a lot of detail there, and you dig deep, and you list down basically all the lessons that you learned while you were at Starbucks. And it's such a powerful book, and there are some really amazing lessons that you talk about. You know, for example, one of the ones that you mentioned is the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom.
Yes.
And another one you mentioned earlier was the fact that, you know, you grow the people, and then the people grow the organization. And it's like some really, really powerful stuff, like absolute gold. I just want to ask you, what was your actual intention behind writing that book?
Well, you know, you're talking about it's not about the coffee, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the intention was, you know, it wasn't really my idea. There were two people that had reported to me. One woman who was the head of marketing for Starbucks International. The other one was a consultant that had done some work with it. And they kept telling me that I had to write a book. And on my wall in my office, I had hundreds of quotes that I had accumulated over like 40 years.
Yeah.
And it was how I kept myself on track. I'd always be reading these quotes, and they always had meaning for me. And they kept saying, "Howard, you got to share all these things with other people." And they kept saying to write a book. Well, I never thought of myself as a book writer. You know, I barely got out of high school, and you know, like I said, I had a couple of years at community college. And finally, I got so frustrated with them. I said, "If you're so interested in writing a book, write it yourself." So they interviewed me for about 100 hours of taped interviews. And
oh wow!
And they started work. I said, you know, I helped work with them on it, and we created some chapters. And then we got a little bit into it, and one got pregnant and left Seattle, and the other one got a big consulting agreement, didn't have time. And by that time, I'd kind of gotten interested in it.
Okay,
you know?
Right.
You know, and so I decided to finish it out, and I got some help. And, you know, it was basically to talk about the things that I really think are important in leadership. And primarily... You know, primarily leadership is about growing yourself first, and when you grow yourself, you know, then you can help others. You know, if it's very difficult, difficult to help others if you're not a whole person yourself. That doesn't mean you have to be a perfect person. I didn't mean that, but and so that's I wrote the book because I wanted to leave something actually be for my grandchildren so they know who their grandfather is, and I also wanted to just document the things that I thought were important, and it wasn't. You don't get rich writing books unless you wrote Harry Potter. It's so it's a little book that done pretty well, but so that's the reason is I just wanted to leave behind the things that I thought were important.
Awesome. That's such an amazing story. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's an awesome story. But yeah, no, your book is absolutely amazing. And people who are actually watching this, I would highly recommend that you go and you read that book because it's just full of absolute gold. And page after page after page, you're just gonna find value. You're just gonna find value, again and again. And it's just such an amazing read. So please go and check it out. I'll make sure I put the title and the link below in the description of this video. And Howard, thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so I've got a couple of really unconventional kind of questions for you, and feel free to say no. If you don't want to answer them, that's absolutely fine. Feel free to say no.
Yeah.
What advice would you want to receive if you were homeless right now?
What advice would I want to receive if I was homeless?
Yes.
I mean, if I'm sitting on the street and somebody came up to me?
Yes.
Probably to get where I'm going to get a roof over my head and where I'm going to get a free meal. Right. Where I'm going to get food. If I'm hungry and I don't have a roof over my head, I need help.
Yeah.
And so, I don't need somebody lecturing me about why I'm homeless.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. I think that's very true, that some people, they overlook that aspect of it, the fact that if somebody is homeless, they need immediate help with their situation because their situation is pretty dire, and they start to think about the macro, and the macro is not really that important or relevant at that point. So yes, that was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. What's a powerful question that nobody has asked you yet?
Powerful questions. I've been asked so many questions in my life.
Yes.
And it's amazing what I've been asked. One time I was in a speech with people I didn't know, right. And this young woman steps up. Well, how much money are you worth?
Ooh. Oh wow.
And how much? And I answered the question, Yeah. But it was strange. It was a strange, but it was fine. She wanted to know. I don't care, and I didn't care. What? God, man, let me think about that for a second. What question? Well, maybe the question would be. When you're old and you're sitting in a rocking chair in the nursing home, how do you want to be evaluated?
Oh, wow.
How do you want your life to be evaluated? How do you want other people to have thought about your life?
Yes, that's a very powerful question. Wow. That is a very powerful question. Awesome. And can I ask, how would you answer that if somebody asked you that question?
Yeah. That he said, this is the way I would answer it, that I set out to nurture and inspire the human spirit.
Right.
And I did that.
Wow.
That people would look at me and say, he lived a life of helping others.
Yes.
And through that, he helped himself.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know my introduction for you was extremely inadequate, but the fact is you're still making impact, despite the fact that you've retired, because you're on the advisory board of many different organizations and foundations, and it's just amazing, like the drive that you have to simply go and help people. It is just phenomenal. So yes, I think that answer would be absolutely true and perfect. So awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Right. Now, I just want to say thank you. I know that we're coming to about 3/4 of an hour. I'm just going to ask you just a couple of quick questions, and then I will try and wrap it up, because I'm very conscious of your time. And I am really grateful that you did manage to just spare some time for us. I really, really appreciate that. Just a few more questions, then we'll wrap up. Okay, so the next one is, how can I and the viewers help you right now?
Well, they can help by becoming servant leaders themselves, by studying servant leadership and understanding what it really means, and trying to figure out how they integrate that into their lives, both into their home lives and into their work lives. And that, I mean, my goal is to change the world and change how we lead. And I think it's done through caring, kind leadership. And servant leadership is, servant leadership is a model for that. There are other words to describe it, but I think it's a good one. And you can look it up. There's plenty written about it, and I certainly talk about it a little bit in my book. But I think that if we could lead with more generosity, kindness, love, and caring, we could change our world.
Yes, and I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that. Yeah. Awesome. Do you mind maybe just digging a little bit deep, and for the people who are not familiar with it, can you just explain what the servant leader model actually is?
What servant leadership actually is?
Yes.
Well, in the shortest definition, it's understanding that as a leader, you're there to be served, not serve. You're there to serve, not be served.
Right.
And that the goal is to help to serve your people in the journey of their accomplishing their own personal goals, while they help the organization accomplish the organization's goals.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's its simplest form.
Yeah. Awesome. And guys, again, if you read Howard's book, that is something that is a good resource to go to find out a little bit more about the servant leader model. And like I said before, I'll make sure I put the name and the description below in the description box. And really, I think my final question to you is, where can people go to find out more about you and what you're up to, and maybe how can they even get in touch?
Oh, well, they can use my email, hb@howardbehar.com, or they can go to my website.
Awesome. Sorry, can you repeat that email, please? And I'll make sure that I'll put it below in the description.
It's hb@howardbehar.com, my initials and my name.
howardbehar.com.
Behar.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Howard, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and we are kind of approaching the 50-minute mark. So I really appreciate you taking the time to actually be here with us and share all your experience and knowledge. Obviously, I had tons more questions, but I'm super conscious of your time as well. So we'll wrap it up here now, and maybe if you are willing, we'd love to have you back at a later date.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Howard. I really appreciate this. And guys, you have just witnessed some real, gold here. And all I want to say is, make sure you go and you check out Howard's book. And Howard's actually given you his actual email address. You've been handed the keys to the kingdom, so it's up to you now to take action. And all you have to do is just drop an email and just say hi and talk about what is it that you can maybe do to help Howard, or just say hi and say, I was really inspired by such and such that you talked about, because I know there have been some really real golden nuggets in this conversation. So please go and check that out, and also please subscribe to the channel, because that's the only way we're going to build this community, make it strong, and make it grow. And I'll be able to serve you guys better by doing so. So thank you so much, Howard. One last time, I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you very much.
Amazing. Yes, no worries. It was my pleasure, a real honor to have you here, and it was just a blast. It was awesome. I had a fantastic time having this conversation with you, and hopefully we'll share some more in the future.
Okay, Talal. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you, Howard. I really appreciate it. And guys, in the meantime, stay awesome and keep hustling. Take care. Bye.